Okay, let's just jump right in and unpack this. Imagine, just for a second, that you are standing on the sidewalk across from a house fire.
Oh, yeah. That is a terrifying thought right out of the gate.
It really is. It's night. And what's the very first thing that hits you?
The heat.
The heat, right. And the visceral stuff, you see the roaring orange light reflecting off the
You
windows.
can feel it on your cheeks from like 50 feet away.
Exactly. You hear the glass shattering and the sirens just cutting through the air.
The chaotic volume of the water hitting the roof.
It's so loud, it is bright, and it is just undeniably destructive.
It's a complete sensory overload. That's the Hollywood version of disaster right there.
Totally.
It's what our brains are completely wired to fear. The immediate kinetic violence of the flame.
Right, it triggers that primal fight or flight response.
Because it's a tangible, visible threat. You can see it eating the house.
Right, exactly. And we are so conditioned by movies and the news or just human instinct to think that this moment,
While the flames are actively visible.
yeah, while they are visible, that this is the disaster. We think that once the guys in the yellow suits roll up the hoses and the fire truck drives away,
That's over.
yeah, that the danger has passed.
Yeah.
The credits roll and the screen fades to black.
And that, I have to say, is the single most expensive misconception in the entire world of property loss.
Wow, really?
Oh, absolutely. That fade to black moment you're talking about, that isn't the end. It's barely the intermission.
Okay, that is a really bold statement to start with, but today we are going to flip that narrative completely on its head.
We really are.
We're going to talk about what happens after the sirens fade. You know, when the trucks drive away and the water is turned off and that silence settles in?
Because that is when the real battle actually begins.
Right. And to guide us through this, we are doing a deep dive into some fascinating source material today.
Yes, beyond the blaze, the dynamics of smoke and soot.
Specifically, we are looking at episode 9 of that material,
Yeah.
and it argues something that really caught me off guard.
It argues that fire damage is actually a misnomer,
Yeah, that blew my mind.
because the vast majority of what we actually deal with in the aftermath is smoke and soot damage.
Which I found absolutely fascinating because we usually just lump it all together, right? Fire and smoke. Like they are the exact same.
Well, they are one continuous thing, but they behave so differently.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to expand your understanding of fire losses way beyond the obvious charring and burning.
We are going to unpack why the invisible aftermath is often way more dangerous.
And more expensive.
Oh, significantly more expensive than the flames themselves.
So if we want to start with a concept that really frames this entire discussion, we have to look at the primary insight from the source material.
It's a very simple sentence, but it carries so much weight.
Yeah, hit me with it.
Smoke damage spreads faster than fire damage.
Man, that stopped me dead in my tracks when I read it. Smoke damage spreads faster than fire damage.
It's counterintuitive, right?
Totally. I mean, we know fire's fast. We have all seen those videos of how quickly a dry room can just go up in flames.
A flashover can happen in minutes.
Right, but you were saying smoke beats it to the punch.
Every single time. It wins the race before the fire even knows the race has started.
How does that even work physically?
Well, to understand why, we kind of have to stop thinking about disaster as an event and start thinking about physics and chemistry.
Okay, let's get into the physics.
Think about the physical nature of fire first. For a fire to move, what does it need?
Fuel. It has to burn something.
Exactly. It needs to consume something to travel from point A to point B.
Right.
It has to burn the rug, then it burns the table, then it moves up to the curtains.
Right, it has to chew through the room.
And that takes time. However brief that time is, it is constrained by the physical matter available to it.
Like a Pac-Man, it has to eat the dots to move through the maze.
That is a great way to put it. It can't just jump across a vacuum. Now consider smoke.
Okay,
Smoke doesn't need to consume anything to move.
because it's already a byproduct.
Right. It is a mix of heated gases and particulate matter. And it is highly pressurized by the intense heat of the fire.
So it's basically being pushed.
Violently pushed. It simply needs space. It expands rapidly to fill whatever volume is available to it.
Wow.
So while the fire is still chewing on the sofa down in the living room, the smoke has already traveled up the stairs,
It's already down the hallway.
into the bedrooms, up into the attic. It has already claimed the rest of the house before the flames even touch the living room doorway.
So while the fire is local, the smoke is global.
Exactly. It's a global event for the structure.
That is a terrifying thought for anyone listening. I mean, you could be totally safe from the heat technically, but your property is already being assaulted by this invisible wave.
That is exactly the dynamic we need to understand. Fire is limited by geometry and fuel load. Smoke is limited only by airflow and pressure.
Which brings us directly into the first major section of our analysis today. We really need to look at this lingering threat.
Let's do it.
I want to deconstruct this first authority quote from the text because it absolutely sets the tone for this whole deep dive.
The one about the timeline.
Yeah. The quote is, "The fire ends, the damage doesn't."
It sounds almost like a horror movie tagline, doesn't
And
it?
it really does sound ominous. Because usually in life, when an event is over, it is over.
You'd think so.
Right. Like if a storm hits, eventually the wind stops blowing and the rain stops falling.
And you walk outside and assess the damage.
Exactly. The damage isn't actively continuing to happen after the sun comes out. A broken window is just a broken window.
It's static.
But this quote suggests that with fire, the clock is actually still ticking even after the fire department leaves.
And that is the crucial distinction you have to make. Fire is an event. It has a definitive start time and an end time. It has a duration.
Okay.
But the damage caused by smoke and soot is a chemical process.
A chemical process.
Right. And chemical processes do not just stop because the heat is gone.
So it's still reacting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The source material uses the word dynamics in its title. The dynamics of smoke and soot. That word was chosen very carefully.
Because dynamics implies movement, right? Or
Yeah.
change.
Yes. It implies an active force.
Mhm.
See, we often think of soot as just dust.
Yeah, just black dirt.
Right. You haven't dusted the top of your bookshelf in a month, so there's a layer of gray stuff. It sits there.
It's passive.
Highly passive. If you leave it for another month, it's just a slightly thicker layer of dust. It doesn't hurt the bookshelf.
It's annoying, but it's not attacking the furniture. It's just inert matter waiting for a wet rag.
Correct. But soot is not dust. The source material really wants us to understand that soot is an active byproduct of incomplete combustion.
Meaning things that didn't burn all the way.
Right. And it contains oils, carbons, and crucially
And
acids.
acids. Okay, that changes things.
Entirely. When that settles on a surface, it isn't just sitting there minding its own business. It is interacting with the surface.
It's actually bonding to it.
It is binding to it. It's etching it. It's discoloring it.
Wow.
So when the source says the damage doesn't end, it means that if you look at a smoke-damaged kitchen counter on day 1, and then you come back and look at it on day 7 without having treated it,
The damage is actually worse.
significantly worse. The material is actively degrading every hour it sits there.
That completely changes the urgency of the situation. I think most people, myself included, would think, all right, the fire is out, everyone is safe.
Let's take a breath.
Yeah, let's wait for the insurance adjuster. Let's take the weekend to recover in a hotel.
But what you are doing by taking the weekend is allowing the destruction to mature.
You are giving the chemical reaction time to work.
Imagine you spilled a very weak battery acid on your granite countertop.
Ouch. Okay.
If you wipe it up in 10 seconds, no problem.
Right. It's fine.
But if you leave it there for a week while you stay at a hotel,
You have a permanent etch mark etched right into the stone.
that is exactly what soot is doing to your entire house. It is binding to the surface and chemically reacting with it.
So we aren't talking about cleaning a stain at all. We are talking about stopping a chemical reaction.
Exactly. You're trying to halt a process. And we have to circle back to that speed of destruction we touched on in the intro.
Because the smoke got there faster than the fire?
Right. We established that. But we also need to speculate on how that actually happens in a closed environment like a house.
Yeah. How does it navigate the rooms?
Well, fire is limited by geometry and fuel, but smoke is limited only by airflow.
So if smoke is just hot gas and particles, it's basically just looking for an exit.
It's looking for equilibrium. High pressure always seeks low pressure.
And the fire is the high pressure.
The fire creates intense heat, which creates intense pressure. That pressure pushes the smoke violently away from the
It's
source.
trying to escape the heat.
It forces the smoke into cracks, into crevices behind baseboards, into electrical outlets, into light fixtures.
Oh, man, into the outlets.
Everywhere. And this is why the damage doesn't end. Because that smoke has been forced into places you literally cannot see.
Inside the walls.
Yes. And it is sitting there reacting with the materials behind your drywall inside your sensitive electronics.
It's like an infection. The initial wound is visible, but the infection is spreading silently in the bloodstream.
That is a very apt analogy. The fire is the wound. The smoke residue is the systemic infection.
And just like an infection, if you don't treat it immediately with the right medicine, it gets worse.
In this case, proper restoration chemistry. Otherwise, it will cause systemic failure of the property.
So we have this idea that the damage is ongoing and active, but the source material actually takes it a step further.
It does. It gets into the mechanics of movement.
Right. It suggests that this isn't just random spreading. And that brings us to the second major theme today, which is the behavior of smoke.
This is where the source material gets almost poetic, to be honest.
There is a quote here that I find so fascinating. It says, "Smoke chooses where to settle."
Chooses.
Yeah, that's personification. It makes the smoke sound like it has a brain.
It does.
Like it's walking into a room and looking around and deciding, I think I'll sit on that white sofa over there.
It really does sound that way. But obviously, smoke doesn't have consciousness.
Obviously.
However, the use of the word chooses highlights a massive point. The movement isn't random.
It's following rules.
It follows strict laws of physics and thermodynamics. To the untrained eye, a homeowner walks in and thinks the smoke just went everywhere randomly.
Right, just a big black cloud.
But a restoration expert walks into that same room and sees a map of logic.
A map of logic. Okay, so what is the logic? How exactly does smoke choose?
It's largely about temperature and attraction. We already mentioned pressure moving from high to low.
Right, the forceful push.
But there is also this concept of thermal attraction. The scientific term is thermophoresis.
Thermophoresis. Okay, that sounds like a serious Scrabble word. Break that down for us.
It's a critical concept in fire restoration. It describes the tendency of particles suspended in a gas to migrate from a hot region to a cold region.
Hot to cold.
Always. Smoke is incredibly hot. The walls usually are cooler.
Okay.
The corners of the room are even cooler than the flat walls because of the structural wood framing behind the drywall.
Wait, why does the wood framing make it cooler?
Because it acts as a thermal bridge to the outside, or just a denser mass that holds cooler temperatures better than hollow drywall cavities.
Oh, okay. I actually think I've seen pictures of this. When you look at fire damage photos, the corners of the ceiling look like they have black spider webs in them.
Yes.
I always just assumed the fire was burning actual spider webs that were already there.
That is a very, very common misconception. Those are called smoke webs or soot tags.
Soot tags.
Yes. It has absolutely nothing to do with spiders.
That is wild. What is it then?
It is actually the smoke particles ionizing and chaining together.
Like magnets.
Exactly like tiny magnets.
Yeah.
They are attracted to the corner of the room because that cooler thermal bridge pulls them in.
So the smoke literally chooses that corner because the physics of the temperature differential demands it.
It dictates it must go there. One particle sticks to the wall, then another particle comes along and electrically bonds to that first one,
And they chain outward into the room.
building long, fragile chains of pure carbon that look exactly like hanging spider webs.
But they aren't sticky.
Not at all. If you touch them, they don't feel like a web. They just instantly disintegrate into black powder on your finger.
It's pure physics. Thermal attraction and electrostatic bonding. That is
Right.
honestly mind-blowing.
It's beautiful in a very destructive way, but it underscores the main point. The smoke isn't just floating aimlessly.
It's hunting.
It's hunting for specific conditions. It's hunting for equilibrium.
And this brings us to the broader theme of smoke migration, because the smoke migrates to cooler areas and lower pressure areas.
Correct.
So imagine you have a fire in a basement, right? And somebody opens a window on the second floor bedroom.
Oh, you have just created a highway.
Really? Just
Yeah.
by opening a window.
Absolutely. The smoke will rush up the stairs, completely ignoring the first floor, just to get to that open window.
It bypasses the living room entirely.
Mostly yes, because the strong draft is pulling it up. It deposits soot all along that specific path to the window.
It chose that path because you created the airflow for it.
You gave it an exit and it took it.
It is incredible to think about. We usually think of containing a fire by closing doors, but we rarely think about containing the air currents.
The air currents dictate the damage.
And because of this behavior, the source material notes that smoke can end up in really surprising places.
Very surprising.
Like, you could have a small grease fire in the kitchen, but the most heavy soot damage is actually inside a dresser drawer up in the master bedroom.
Exactly. Think about how that happens. If that drawer was even slightly open, or if the back of the dresser has gaps in the paneling.
The pressure forces the smoke inside the dresser.
Right.
And because the air inside the drawer is dark and cool and still, it stalls out. The particles drop out of suspension in the air and they just settle all over your clean clothes.
Which brings up an analogy we were discussing during the pre-show that I absolutely love.
Oh, the uninvited guest analogy.
Yes. Explain that for the listener because it frames this perfectly.
Well, imagine you throw a party, And you have this really obnoxious, uninvited guest show up.
We all know one.
Right. They don't just stand in the busy, chaotic hallway where the party is happening.
No, they want to get comfortable.
They find the most comfortable chair in the furthest, quietest room of the house, and they just settle in.
Far away from the noise.
Exactly. And not only do they settle in, they spill their red wine all over your expensive upholstery.
That is the perfect way to visualize smoke behavior.
Right. Smoke doesn't want to be in the hot, chaotic center of the actual fire room. It wants to find the quiet, cool places to rest.
And unfortunately for you, those quiet, cool places are usually your closets, your bedding, the inside of your computers.
Your most delicate valuables.
And when it spills that drink, to continue your metaphor.
That spilled drink is the residue.
Yes. And that leads us directly into the chemistry of corrosion. We've hinted at this, but let's dive deep now.
Yes, let's go there. Because the source explicitly mentions acidic residue.
This is the real why it matters portion of our deep dive.
Right. We've established that smoke moves fast and it settles everywhere. Now, as a listener, you have to be asking, so what?
Why is that so bad?
Yeah, why can't I just get a wet rag and wipe the black dust off my TV?
Because if I spill dirt on my counter, I just wipe it and I'm done.
But this isn't dirt.
We have to look at what actually burned to create that soot.
Yeah.
In a modern home, what are we primarily burning?
Well, everything. Right. Wood, obviously. The framing.
Yes, but also plastics?
Synthetic fabrics on the couches. Electronics, carpets, PVC pipes.
Exactly. Synthetics and plastic. See, when you burn raw wood, like in a campfire, you get ash and carbon.
Which is dirty, but relatively neutral, right?
It's fairly neutral.
Mm-hmm.
But when you burn PVC, plastic, and synthetic carpet fibers, you are creating incredibly complex chemical reactions.
You were creating new compounds.
You are releasing chlorides and sulfides into the air, suspended in that smoke.
Okay, chlorides and sulfides.
And when those chlorides mix with the humidity in the air...
Wait, does a fire create humidity?
Massive amounts of moisture. Combustion releases water vapor, and the fire department is actively spraying thousands of gallons of water.
Oh, right, of course.
So those airborne chlorides mix with all that moisture, and they form hydrochloric acid.
Whoa. Hydrochloric acid, that is serious stuff.
It is highly corrosive, so that light dusting of soot sitting on your bathroom faucet upstairs, it isn't just black dust.
It's microscopic droplets of acid.
Exactly.
And acid eats things.
Acid corrodes, and this connects perfectly back to our very first point from the source material.
The damage doesn't end.
Right. If you leave that acidic residue on a chrome faucet for a few days, you will start to see pitting.
Like little dimples in the metal?
Yes. The metal is literally being eaten away by the soot. If you leave it on a marble countertop, it will etch the stone.
It loses its shine permanently.
Permanently. And if you leave it on a delicate circuit board inside your smart TV,
the acid corrodes the copper contacts.
And the device just fails out of nowhere, weeks or months later, long after the fire trucks are gone.
That is the invisible danger the source talks about. You might look at your TV and think, oh, it just needs a quick dusting.
But inside, it is slowly dying from chemical corrosion.
And the timeline here is super critical, right?
Extremely critical. Restoration professionals have a term they use called yellowing.
Yellowing, like old paper.
Similar concept. If you look at the plastic casing of an appliance, say a white refrigerator or a toaster after a fire,
okay,
if it isn't cleaned immediately, the acid causes a chemical change deep in the plastic. It turns distinctly yellow and it becomes brittle.
And that's permanent.
Totally permanent. You can't just clean that off with bleach because the material itself has fundamentally changed at a molecular level.
So speed is essentially the only antidote to acidity.
Speed is everything. The clock starts ticking the very moment the fire is put out. Every single hour that passes allows that acid to burrow deeper into the substrate of your belongings.
So a wait-and-see approach from your insurance company is really a wait-and-rot approach?
It is disastrous. You have to neutralize that acid fast. You need alkaline cleaning agents to balance the pH immediately.
You can't just wipe it down with a wet paper towel.
Actually, wiping it with water might activate the acid further if it was dry soot.
Oh man, so you can make it worse by cleaning it wrong.
Very easily. You need specific chemistry to fight this specific chemistry.
Okay, let's unpack where all this acidic smoke is actually traveling. We talked about it moving through hallways and up the stairs.
And natural pathways.
But there's a very specific mechanism the source material identifies as the superhighway of contamination.
Oh, the HVAC system. Yes.
The heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system.
If your house is a human body, The HVAC system is the lungs and the circulatory system combined.
And in a fire event, it becomes the absolute worst enemy of the structure.
It accelerates the damage exponentially.
I can definitely see why. It is literally a machine designed to move air around the entire house rapidly.
And distribute it evenly.
But most people don't think to turn their AC off when a fire starts.
No, of course not.
I mean, you are panicking. You are grabbing your kids and running out the front door. You aren't stopping in the hallway thinking, let me just tap the thermostat to off.
You're trying to survive, so the system just keeps running the whole time.
Right.
Now think about how an HVAC actually works mechanically. It has a return right. That's the big vent in the wall or ceiling that sucks air in.
The intake.
And it has supplies. Those are the smaller vents in every room that blow the conditioned air back out.
So it's essentially a giant whole house vacuum cleaner.
A vacuum cleaner that is actively sucking the dense acidic smoke from the fire room.
Even if the door to that room is closed.
It pulls it under the door, pulls it into the return duct, drags it through the air filter.
Which I assume gets overwhelmed instantly.
A standard filter is overwhelmed in about 2 seconds of heavy smoke. Then it drags that smoke over the blower motor, over the sensitive heating coils.
Coating everything inside the machine.
And then it forcefully pushes it out into every single other room in the house simultaneously.
Talk about efficient destruction. It is delivering the acid to every room.
It is ruthlessly efficient. This completely answers the homeowner's question. If the fire was isolated to the stove in the kitchen, how did thick soot get all over the baby's crib and the nursery upstairs with the door closed?
The answer is usually the HVAC system.
Special delivery right through the ceiling vent directly above the crib.
But there is a double danger here, isn't there? It's not just that it spreads the smoke to the other rooms.
No, the system itself becomes a major casualty.
The ducts in the machine.
Think about the interior of your ductwork. It is often lined with porous insulation or just bare galvanized metal.
Okay.
The soot and that sticky acidic residue completely coat the inside of those ducts. It coats the expensive blower motor, it coats the coils, everything.
So let's play out a scenario. Let's say you hire a restoration crew to clean the house.
Okay.
They come in, they scrub the walls, they chemically clean the carpets, they wash all the clothes. It looks great.
That's fine.
But they forget to service the HVAC system.
Then they have completely wasted your money and their time.
Because it's still dirty inside.
Because the very first time it gets cold and you turn that heater back on, you are blowing forced air over a massive surface area of toxic, odorous, acidic residue.
You are just blowing it right back into the clean rooms.
You are effectively recontaminating the entire clean space. You are blowing the ghost of the fire back into the house.
That is such a critical hidden aspect of fire loss. Because it's easy for an adjuster to see a burnt wall in the kitchen.
It's very obvious.
But it's really hard to see the inside of a duct 20 feet away.
And that is exactly why the source material emphasizes HVAC contamination so heavily. It is the absolute heart of the migration theme.
If you don't address the transport system, you can't stop the migration.
It is often the very first thing that needs to be addressed by a professional crew. Seal off the registers. Turn off the unit. Stop the circulation.
This brings us to the aftermath phase. So the fire is out. We understand the complex physics of the smoke. We know about the acid. And we know about the HVAC superhighway.
Now we have to make the hard decisions.
Right. The source material brings up this crucial concept of salvage versus replacement.
This is the decision matrix.
Yeah.
It is honestly the hardest part for homeowners emotionally.
Because it's their stuff.
It's where the cold physics meets the heart.
I can easily imagine that. You walk through your home a few days later picking up things that look okay on the surface. Maybe a chair just looks a little dusty and you desperately want to keep it.
Of course you do. It has memories attached to it.
But based on everything we've learned today, looking okay on the outside isn't the standard anymore.
It cannot be the standard. The new standard has to be, can we chemically neutralize the acid and can we remove the particulate completely?
And if the answer is no,
It has to be thrown out and replaced.
and what are the main factors there? Is it just about what the material is made of?
It's heavily about porosity
Mm.
and also cost effectiveness.
Okay, porosity.
Non-porous items like glass, metal, sealed hardwood. Those can usually be cleaned and salvaged if you get to them fast enough.
Before the pitting starts.
Exactly. But porous items, that is usually where the battle is lost completely.
We are talking about fabrics, upholstery couches, unsealed wood.
Yes, anything that can absorb air. And this leads us to the final and perhaps the most persistent key concept in the source material.
Odor penetration.
Yes.
The smell of a house fire. It is unmistakable if you have ever smelled it.
Yeah,
You
I
never
remember.
forget it.
And it seems to just last forever.
It lasts forever because of where the odor actually lives.
What do you mean where it lives?
People think odor is just a ghost floating in the air, like a cloud. But odor is not a ghost. Odor is a physical molecule.
A physical piece of matter.
Yes, it is a volatile organic compound, a VOC. If you smell smoke, you are physically inhaling a microscopic molecule that used to be a piece of your burning house.
Wow, that is a gross but powerful way to think about it.
It's the truth.
So if I walk into a room a month after a fire and it smells strongly like smoke, it means there is still physical smoke residue somewhere in that room. Absolutely. There is no such thing as a phantom odor. If your nose detects it, the physical source is still present off-gassing into the air.
And this connects right back to the smoke migration and the uninvited guest analogy.
It ties it all together. Because smoke expands under that extreme pressure we talked about, it forces those odorous molecules deep into the pores of the material.
It pushes them in.
It forcefully drives them into the raw stud framing behind the drywall. It drives them deep into the center of the foam cushions on your sofa.
And this is why you can't just walk in and spray some Febreze and call it a day.
Masking doesn't work. It's honestly delusion. You have to remove or seal the physical source.
But here's the mechanism that really blew my mind when researching this. The heat.
The heat expanding the pores.
Yes. Explain how that works because it's fascinating.
The heat expands everything, right. So during the active fire, the intense ambient heat causes the wood grain in your wall studs to open up.
Like skin pores in a sauna.
It's really like a sauna. The heat expands the pores of the drywall, the wood, the plastics. And while those pores are wide open, that high-pressure smoke forces the VOC molecules incredibly deep inside.
Deep inside the wood.
Yes. Then the fire goes out. The fire department leaves.
The house cools down over a few days.
And what happens when things cool down? They contract.
Pores close up.
The pores clamp shut tight, and they trap the odorous smoke molecule deep inside the material. It is now completely encapsulated inside the wood or plastic.
It's like a time capsule of stench.
That is exactly what it is. So you walk in a week later, and the restoration crew sprays some heavy lemon air freshener.
It smells great for a day.
It smells like lemons. But that smoke molecule is still trapped safely inside the structural wood.
Biding its time.
Over time, as the house heats up again, naturally, maybe in the middle of summer when the sun beats down on the roof,
The wood heats up.
the pores expand slightly, and the molecule slowly off-gasses. It releases its odor back into the ambient air of your living room.
3 months later, you smell the fire again.
It's called odor return. And it is the nightmare of the restoration industry.
And this is what truly drives that salvage versus replacement decision we talked about.
Entirely.
Yes.
If you know you cannot get the trapped odor out of a material, you absolutely have to throw it out.
There is no saving it.
With highly porous materials, you often cannot get the odor out without completely destroying the item in the cleaning process.
Like a couch cushion.
Right. You cannot wash a thick foam sofa cushion aggressively enough to remove the microscopic particles trapped right in the dead center of the foam.
You'd have to shred it.
So despite the couch looking totally fine on the outside, if the odor has penetrated deeply, it is a total loss. Period.
So a kid's stuffed animal. A teddy bear.
If it was in heavy smoke, it likely has to go into the trash.
That is heartbreaking.
It is, but think about the chemistry. Every single time your child hugs that Barrett is going to compress the foam and release those trapped acidic VOCs right into their face.
Oh, man. Yeah, you can't risk that. That is a harsh reality.
It's very harsh.
But it really explains why insurance adjusters often walk in and just say, gut it. Throw all the furniture out. Throw the clothes out.
Cut out the drywall.
Yeah. It seems incredibly wasteful to an outsider, but maybe it's just the only realistic approach based on the physics.
It's the economics of certainty. That is what insurance runs on.
Yeah.
We could spend $500 trying an ozone treatment and specialty dry cleaning on a $300 armchair.
And it still might smell like a campfire next July.
Exactly. Or we can just cut a check for a brand new $300 chair and guarantee there is no odor return.
It's a brutal calculus for the homeowner.
It is. But understanding the physics of the smoke helps you make peace with the loss. You have to realize you aren't throwing away a perfectly good chair.
You are throwing away an active contamination source.
You're throwing away an acid-coated sponge that is slowly destroying your indoor air quality.
This has been such an incredible, eye-opening journey today. We started this whole deep dive thinking about the obvious stuff. Flames and heat and burning wood.
The visual disaster.
But we've ended up spending an hour talking about pressure differentials, acidic chemical corrosion, ductwork highways, and molecular odor penetration.
It really reframes the entire lived experience of a fire, doesn't it?
Completely. We went from seeing fire as this dramatic cinematic event to understanding fire loss as a highly complex, invisible ecosystem.
An ecosystem of smoke migration and ongoing chemical reactions.
We moved from the macro event down to the microscopic reality.
And it brings us right back full circle to that powerful quote we started with.
The fire ends, the damage doesn't.
It is the one lesson that binds all of this science together. The event of the fire is short. The life of the smoke is very long.
We want to leave our listeners today with a final thought to mull over, something to just explore in your own mind.
Okay.
We always look at our own homes and we think about fire safety strictly in terms of the flames. We buy smoke detectors and we put fire extinguishers under the sink.
Which you should absolutely do.
Yes, please do that. But those tools are for fighting the primary event. Look around your living room right now as you listen to this. Look at your air conditioning vents on the ceiling. Look at your fabric curtains. Look at which bedroom doors are left open during the day.
Think about the airflow patterns in your house.
Exactly. If a small contained fire happened today, the true extent of your financial and emotional loss wouldn't just be determined by how fast the fire truck gets down your street.
No, it wouldn't.
It would be determined by whether your AC happens to be running at that exact moment. It would depend on whether your master bedroom door is wide open or shut tight.
It would depend on whether your furniture is made of solid sealed oak or highly porous particle board and synthetic foam.
The hidden airflow and the types of materials you buy dictate the scale of the disaster just as much as the spark does.
It completely changes the definition of safety. It shifts it from just preventing burns to actively preventing the rapid migration of a toxic atmosphere.
Well said. A huge thank you to everyone for listening to this deep dive into the invisible dynamics of disaster.
It is heavy stuff for sure, but knowing the actual science makes us all smarter.
And maybe just a little more prepared for the unexpected.
Because knowledge is the very best restoration tool we have.
Absolutely. We will see you all on the next deep dive. Stay curious.